Hey, Roger Meadows. This story's just for you. So for those of you who don't know, Roger Meadows has been a good friend of the show who talked a lot about ballot initiatives. And this is a story I wanted to cover. So for our good friend Roger Meadows, let's talk about what are ballot initiatives. Now, the thing is, folks, ballot initiatives are a way in which citizens can regain their power. Now, there's only a handful of states that are ballot initiative states. And I think it's a social responsibility of every single U.S. citizen to make their states a ballot initiative state, because that's where we circumvent, go around our state legislators, and we, the people, can actually get the laws passed that we want. We, the people, us as citizens, sovereign citizens, come onto equal playing grounds of our politicians. What a sight that would be. So let's go ahead and pull up this video here. Shout out again to Case Study QB. And of course, special shout out to Roger Meadows. This one's for you, buddy.
From reproductive rights to raising the minimum wage, this November, voters will decide much more than just who wins the White House. Ballot initiatives are direct democracy. There's no petitioning a lawmaker to vote one way or the other. Voters vote directly on the issue. But how do these initiatives get on the ballot? And do state lawmakers always act on them? Ann Whitesell is an assistant professor of political science at Miami University in Ohio. Can we do a 101 of ballot initiatives, starting with, so how does an issue become a ballot measure?
Sure. So I think the first thing to remember is that this is not possible in about half the country. There's only about 26 states where ballot initiatives occur. It's usually
Now, I want to pull this up here. These are the states. Now, again, each state is different. Amendment, statute, or veto referendum, statute or veto referendum, amendment, and veto referendum. So we got Illinois as amendment, and also Mississippi and Florida. Then for amendment, statute, or veto referendum, you got Montana, North and South Dakota, Nebraska, Colorado, Nevada, Oregon, California, Arizona. You got Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, Ohio, Michigan, Massachusetts. So there you go. And then in regards towards statute or veto referendum, you got Maine, you got Wyoming, you got Idaho, you got Washington, Utah, and of course the great state of Alaska. Good to see Alaska there. But then in regards towards veto, you only have Maryland and New Mexico. That means what's going on here? New York, Pennsylvania, North and South Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, Texas, what's going on? Kansas, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Hawaii, Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Vermont. You guys are not ballot initiative states. And if you live in those great states that I mentioned, you got to fight to make your state into a ballot initiative state. And look, I know a lot of people are burnt out by electoral politics, but if you really want to make a change, if you want to just do one thing as a favor for Hard Lens Media, if you're not going to vote for any candidate, that's fine. But if you live in one of these ballot initiative states, find out what ballot initiatives are up there, fight for the good ones, vote against the bad ones, and seize the day.
a group of organized citizens. They get around an issue and they write up language for what they want to be on the ballot. And then they have to go and petition their fellow citizens within the state and get them to sign on saying they also want this to be on the ballot. After you amass all of those signatures, then you turn it in to the Secretary of State. They go through and they validate all the signatures, and then they have to decide what the actual language is going to be. And then even more important than that sometimes is how it's going to be summarized for the voters, because you'll have the opportunity to read the actual ballot measure, but then oftentimes what voters actually read is just a quick summary.
So that part is the part that I think often is challenging for voters, because depending on how you frame it could really depend on how people feel about what you're actually asking.
So often one of the problems is that you as the voter don't know what the status quo is. So if there is a ballot measure that says, we're going to raise the minimum wage, for example, if you don't know what the current minimum wage is, you may not have a point of reference when you're then voting on ballot measures. But then there are also issues where it's like much more political, the way that language is used. So we see this a lot when it comes to these abortion ballot initiatives, particularly the use of unborn child versus fetus. Right? That's a clear attempt to try to kind of signal and get emotions out of the voters.
Who gets to decide who's going to frame it?
So in a lot of states, that's up to the Secretary of State. And the Secretary of State, depending on what state you're in, may or may not be a more partisan position.
Are there other political reasons where legislators say, hey, it passed overwhelmingly, but for these political reasons?
Well, that has happened for certain ballot initiative states. And by the way, as I've covered in previous stories, there's been attempts in Ohio and a couple other states that are ballot initiative states in which the state legislator was trying to take away that power from the people. Because as soon as these politicians realize that we can make them irrelevant, oh, you better believe they are going to twist themselves into a pretzel and form a bipartisan committee. That's right, Democratic Republican voters. They will work together to stop you from actually implementing your own constitutional right to maybe get laws passed, because the Senate and House in your state probably take too long by dragging their feet. I get there's a process. I get it. Oh, my goodness, I get there's a process. But you know what? The people are kind of getting tired of being screwed around. And we've covered this on Hard Lens Media, in which states are trying to go after or remove themselves from being ballot initiative states.
We can't implement it.
I mean, there's ideological reasons where they say, I just don't agree with this. We see that happen occasionally. They may not strictly say we're not going to do this, but they just make the implementation very difficult and really drag their feet.
And Whitesell of Miami University, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. So what can we learn from this? What can we learn from this? First of all, there's a lot of things that can be very misleading, all right, in regards towards these ballot initiatives, because sometimes they're written in a way that it's extremely confusing. And it's important for everybody to do their own research in your own state, but also look at why certain things are being brought up as well. And for citizens who live in ballot initiative states, I want to share this map again, because this is extremely important. I have said on the show on previous election cycles and previous midterm election cycles, to know your right as a voter, to know what your state can do. And this is where, again, this is where our fight has to happen. We need to make every single state into a ballot initiative state. Can you imagine things getting done once the people are in charge? Because let's face it, let's face it here, folks. Our politicians, there's maybe a handful of them that actually do give a damn. And I'm being generous there by saying a handful, but there probably is a decent bunch that actually do care. I know, everyone put down your tomatoes, just hear me out. But the vast majority of these politicians do not care. And we have seen so many times in which these politicians say one thing and they do something completely opposite. Can you imagine if we were all ballot initiative states, how we can get things done? You know, the founding fathers, for all their fault, did actually have a big brain idea by ensuring that the state would still be free from a federal government. And I think, we have to remember that there was a point where people were legitimately concerned if our federal government would become too tyrannical. And surprise, surprise, if you look over the horizon, all the vile, evil clouds over D.C. are just there, a buzzing and a booming with lightning and thunderbolts and bats in the air and evil howls to the moon. We're better than this. And how we can be better than this is actually implementing our power as people, as citizens. What a sight it would be if we actually fought back. What a sight it would be if we actually stood our ground and actually used our power. So if you're not going to vote for any candidate, but if you live in a ballot initiative state, any one of these states, at least continue to support your state being a ballot initiative state by supporting the good ballots and vote against the bad ones. And that means also doing your own research too. And that's what I expect out of my audience, to do your own research. You have to read and understand your state laws, because each state is different. But if we lose our power, and again, these politicians, both Democrat and Republicans, will and have done in the past tried to lower the number of ballot initiative states in this country. I talked about Ohio, and the citizens of Ohio, be they Democrat, Republican, or independent, gave a middle finger to their state legislator. That's what they did. Fight for your right. What a sight would be. Maybe we wouldn't be falling into a dictatorship like Francis Ford Coppola says, like, oh my goodness, we're going to have Emperor Trump. maybe if the states actually gave power to the people, we could have maybe a functioning democracy. Is that a bridge too far? My idealism is my weakness. I think we can actually do it if we tried.
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days and to still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to save. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days and to still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe? Were you safe?
Fresh off the masses, the brand new cancerous growth, who has come here to vie for your vote. Come here to cry at the camps and to mourn at the shore for the bodies that float by the wreck of an immigrant boat. Then it's back to their luxury home, couple security booths and a moat. Couple cigars, little escargot, little booze and a soak. Just breathe in the steam and the smoke. Pink salt, lavender, candles are low. Shit, when you do what you do, gotta lighten the load. And he got a life of his own that's a sight to behold. And it's a lot to control, to decipher the code, or to siphon the soul. The cost of a good night's sleep for the working elite is a bargain, no matter the toll. Worth any wager, and that comes straight from the mouth of the means to the goal that will swallow us whole. Right for the picking if you don't mind mold, and you know I don't. Maybe we're pleasantly prone, maybe we're taking a licking, compliantly ticking and ticking and ticking, but never explode. No, I don't deliver the prettiest image, but damn if it isn't an accurate vision of natural fission, of rage at the system and abject heartbreak, patiently waiting for any who will listen. That little blue bird who was watching your words is a federal carrier pigeon, a Langley first. It's a patient observer who hears what it wants and is trained for the worst. Oh, you got nothing to hide. They'll be the ones to decide that after they root through your purse, after they read all your text, after they raid your apartment, confiscate all of its contents, then conjure up evidence out of the air on a wing and a prayer and malicious intelligence nonsense. Any presumption of innocence long since gone, right along with your comforts and constants. Historically first they will come from the communists. So why in the fuck would I say I'm a communist? Well, it might be I love my community more than the monsters of opulence who are holding us hostage, who are vomiting promises. Might be I'm all done seeing our pensions and benefits harvested. Might be I'm all done watching the populace being disarmed in the guise of an armistice. Watching a woman collapse on the floor who will rise no more. She is wheeled out the door and you're next in line for the pharmacist. If you can get me to vote, it's a hard no confidence. But part of the charm of deception is politics wearing the mask of incompetence. It's all in the art of austerity, darling. It's all in the slide of the providence. Until home is as wide as your cubicle height and is only as deep as your coffin is. Maybe I'm miles away from impatience, aching to break off the head of the snake where the capital lust, reptile brain, and the margin of profit is. Like off with his. Like off with his.
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days and to still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to save. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe?